All right, so inverse relations. Relations are basically just functions. So what is the inverse of a relation? Well, a relation that reverses another relation. That's an inverse. Okay, and the notation for this, the inverse of a relation r is written as r to the negative first power. So the inverse of the relation below, 0, -7, -1, 2, -4, -2, 6, 3, we're just going to flip all those numbers. So that would be -7, 0, 2, -1, -2, -4, 3, 6. Okay? And then a function has a one-to-one relationship if the relation and its inverse are functions. And there's a way to check this with the vertical line test. A vertical line test tells you if a function is a function. Then the horizontal line test tells you whether or not the inverse is a function. Okay, so recall the vertical line test is used to determine whether a relation is a function given a graph. So that's when you just draw a vertical line. If it only crosses once, then it's a function. Now the horizontal line test is used to determine whether the inverse of a relation is a function. So that's where you draw the horizontal line and see if it crosses once. If it only crosses once, then the inverse is also a function. So both the relation and its inverse must be a function in order to be one-to-one. Okay, so let's look at these graphs and determine whether they are one-to-one functions. Remember, they must pass the horizontal line test and the vertical line test. So on A, that passes the vertical line test. There's the horizontal line, passes both of those, so it is a function. B, it passes the vertical line test. It does not pass the horizontal line test. So that means the inverse is not a function, which means this is not one-to-one. Okay, for C, it passes the vertical line test. It also passes the horizontal line test. So yes, that is a function. D, it passes the vertical line test, passes the horizontal line test, so that one's a function. E, it passes the vertical line test perfectly, but it does not pass the horizontal line test, so that is not a function. Or not a one-to-one function. It is a function, but not one-to-one. Now F, that one doesn't pass the vertical line test, so that is not a function and is also not one-to-one. Okay? Now let's get into finding inverses. So the notation of an inverse function is written as f of -1, f -1 of x. So that's just inverse, the inverse function. Not all functions have inverses. And then to find the inverse, replace f of x with y, interchange the f or the x and the y, and then solve for y, and then rewrite y as f of -1 of x. I forgot to do that. Whoops. We'll just do it as we go along. Okay, so first step for all of these, plug into the calculator, make sure it passes both the vertical and horizontal line test. So we have f of x equals 4x minus 8. Well, I'm going to plug that into the calculator. That's the graph you get. That passes the horizontal line test and the vertical line test. So it is one-to-one. So the inverse is a function, so we're good. Now we're going to switch the x and the y's and solve for x. And remember, f of x equals y. So this is going to be y equals 4x minus 8. Switch my x and the y's, so x equals 4y minus 8. Now we're going to solve for x. So add the 8 over. You get x plus 8 equals 4y. Divide by 4. So you get y equals x plus 8 divided by 4. But the last thing I need you to do that I forgot to do, so that would be f -1 of x equals x plus 8 over 4. So the inverse is x plus 8 over 4. Okay, let's do the next one. So first we're going to plug it into the calculator, see if it passes both the vertical and horizontal line tests. That's the graph you get. Now that does not pass the horizontal line test, which means it does not have an inverse, so we cannot find the inverse of this, and we're done. We just say it has no inverse. Okay? For this one, plug it into the calculator and we get that graph. That passes both the vertical and the horizontal line test. So now let's just find the inverse. So we have y equals negative square root of x plus 2 minus 7 Switch my x and my y's, so we have x equals negative square root of y plus 2 minus 7. Add the 7 over, divide by negative 1. You get negative x minus 7 equals the square root of y plus 2. Square both sides to get rid of that square root. So you get negative x minus 7 squared equals y plus 2. Subtract the 2 over, and you get y equals negative x minus 7 squared minus 2. Now you can square that out if you want to. I'm not going to require it, so you could just leave it like that. Then remember, the last step is to replace the y with f of negative 1. So this is going to be f inverse of x equals negative x minus 7 squared minus 2. Okay? Let's do this last one. So first, we're going to plug it into the calculator, make sure it works. You get a graph that's about like that. That passes both of our tests, so we're good. Then we have y equals the cube root of x minus 9 divided by 4. Switch my x and my y, so you get x equals the cube root of y minus 9 divided by 4. Solve for y. So we're going to multiply by 4, so you get 4x equals 3 square root of 3, or the cube root of y minus 9, sorry. Now to get rid of that cube root, we're going to cube both sides. So we get 4x cubed equals y minus 9. Add the 9 over, so you get 4x cubed plus 9 equals y. Well, 4x cubed, we can cube that out. That's 64x cubed plus 9 equals y. Then the last thing you have to do is just plug in that negative 1. So f of negative 1, or f inverse of x equals 64x cubed plus 9. Okay? And then we're going to save the rest for class, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take the quiz.